Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Talking Point. Sean Michael Small here once again on this relatively nice Tuesday morning, a morning which has, I guess you could say, the obligatory or the usual amount of tragedy in our newspapers. Of course, I don't just speak about the Commission of Inquiry and the back and forth that's going on there, but also with regards to the fact that our murder rate seems to be going, well, I can't say slow and steady. It's more like at a quick pace and steady as we march to 600 murders for the year. However, today, I guess you could say political news takes precedence over, well, it's very ironic at this point, but I honestly don't have any other way to say the typical murder stories that you see in the news. And to speak about those political issues, of course, I'm joined by my co-host via Zoom today, hopefully in good health or better health, Mr. Keaton Shah. Good morning, Keaton.
Good morning, Sean Michael Small. You seem to be smiling this morning, a bit happy.
I'm smiling.
Well, this is actually one of your, I suppose, light introductions in the sense that you seem a bit more bubbly than per usual.
I am basically saying that we've reached the point where I have no better way to describe our murder rate except quick, fast, typical, consistent. Like it is ironically funny, not funny, but ironically funny, while at the same time being somewhat tragic. But I don't necessarily want to get into that. I mean, we already have one of the more recent murders is already tragic enough with regards to the family being somewhat caught by surprise over the whole thing, given that, as far as they're aware, it seems as though the victims were not involved in anything once again. So we do have to question that whole excuse of, well, it's just gangsters killing gangsters. Really and truly, how much of that is holding to be true with regards to the total murder rate? How much really of it, what fraction is gangsters? But two big things happened, of course, in the political sphere within the last couple of days, or you could say yesterday. One, of course, is the results of the PNM interim election came out. We're not necessarily surprised, except Karen did express her surprise at the voter turnout, which is something that might be signs that do indicate something. Meanwhile, more or less, the members of the Progressive Democratic Patriots that held office in the THA, they resigned. By my count, it is 16 names. We do have two of the press releases there, if we could show them for the audience. One by Farley Augustine and one signed by all the members of the Assembly. I assume then it is the 14 assemblymen, which includes the Chief Sec and the Deputy Chief Sec, as well as at the bottom on the second press release, there will be 14 other names. So that's the 12 other assemblymen and the 2 councillors. And this has caused a bit of a, I don't want to say controversy, but I will say it's caused a bit of a debate, because there we have Farley Augustine's press release there with his, well, he is trying to explain the situation, not necessarily going into much detail. Let's switch to the second one quick. And there we have 60 names, so I assume it's 14 assemblymen and 2 appointed councillors. Keaton, this situation, it's not necessarily, to me, controversial, but there are people who are bringing it up as though it's controversial. And I do wonder to what extent, one, will it really cause disruption in the THA, as well as two, is it just certain people trying to take advantage or salvage a situation by making something out of nothing? Because we have, of course, Mr. Duke, we have Ansel Dennis, even Martin George kind of expressed doubt, and Newsday has an article where they spoke to some Tibigonians where they as well seem to be upset that they left the PDP, except legally, and I do believe based on the wording of the THA Act and how the THA proceeds with selecting its chief secretary, legally, I think there's precedent enough to state that this does not matter to the workings of the THA. Business goes on and can go on until 2025.
Well, it's controversial in one sense, but not entirely surprising in the other. I think we've had this debate before in the sense that we expected Farley Augustine to leave the Progressive Democratic Patriots, but the collective decision of all members of the Tobago House of Assembly, well, for them to leave as well, shows that they stand behind Farley Augustine. Now, what is controversial is that one can argue that Watson Solomon Duke could not have won the election without Farley and friends, as he referred to them. At the same time, Farley and friends could not have won the Tobago House of Assembly elections without the Progressive Democratic Patriots. So I think that is where the confusion lies. Now, in Trinidad, we only know one thing, which is party politics. So the mere fact that there are individuals there who overwhelmingly won an election without a political institution backing them might confuse the general population, and that is probably why many are seeing it as controversial. I don't necessarily see it that way. I think, there have already been calls for an election. Ansel Dennis, for example, has spoken out. He said this is unconstitutional. Not entirely sure how. I wish he would explain more. Well, let me rephrase. He said possibly unconstitutional. So I hope he would elaborate a bit further on that. But Watson Duke, he said, well, it's time for another election. And I don't think it's necessary to call another election in Tobago as yet. I think it's not something that is necessary due to the political pressure of Watson Solomon Duke or perhaps Ansel Dennis of the People's National Movement, Tobago Arm. But I think it's really up to the people of Tobago. If they come out and they speak, and if there's a general consensus that they themselves feel that it is necessary to call another election, okay, do so. But at this particular point in time, I don't see it being necessary. On top of all of this, again, it was not surprising, but I thought it was rather brilliant, the timing that Farley Augustine and friends chose to resign from the Progressive Democratic Patriots, simply because the PNM Tobago Council is not in full force. They're going through a rebuilding process. The government has a very difficult public relations campaign on their hand right now, following a lot that has happened, not just this year, but following the Tobago House of Assembly elections last year into this year. A lot has happened. The government has really a lot of PR work to do. And finally, you had the PNM internal elections, the results of only which were called last night. So the timing, I suppose, was rather brilliant on their part, because it's a time when everybody is trying to collect themselves. And, interestingly enough, I don't see much more coming out of this. And of course, I could be wrong, but I don't see a lot more coming out of this, at least anytime soon.
Well, so I have a couple of things to say. First of all, just in general, I think people need to think about things in the long term. And I believe that everybody here is looking at short-term thinking. I think Karen might be looking at the long term of the PNM to some extent. Obviously, yes, she is the person in opposition to the winner, so there's going to be some amount of bias that we're going to have to just, keep in the back of our minds. But with a lot of these things, with regards to Mr. Duke's statements, with regards to Mr. Dennis' statements, I think there's a lot of short-term thinking. Maybe Mr. Martin George, he's actually, as a lawyer, is thinking, well, I really would just prefer to this to be very, very clear, and I don't want any ambiguity at all, because truth be told, ambiguity does leave the door open for a mess to be made when things are not settled. But Mr. Duke, I don't necessarily see what he has to gain by calling a fresh elections. Is he going to find a slate that people are going to have confidence in Tobago if Farley Augustine was able to call elections, say, tomorrow, right? Just as an example. Where is he going to find the people? The question is, who is the PDP really? Correction, it is 13 assemblymen and 3 appointed councillors, because the 14th assemblyman would have been Mr. Duke himself. Who is the PDP? All of the other PDP frontliners left. So can we truly say that when they were elected, the people elected the PDP? Because a lot of the complaints are they said we elected a unit. Well, the unit, they moved as a unit. They are still a unit of 16. They just are fed up with Mr. Duke, who started this whole thing over a very, very minor issue in the grand scheme of things. And Mr. Duke was the one that was, as per claims made, acting out of order, trying to bypass proper procedure. Mr. Duke has not been able to put forward a credible defense to counter that claim. Now Mr. Dennis is also saying from the PNM, he is ironically not an assemblyman, but he is the head of the Tobago Council. He is saying that this is unprecedented and we have no variants, etc., etc. I would like Mr. Dennis to first realize that the THA Act does not care about political parties, so your term of no variance really does not matter. So you using it makes you seem as though you're acting in bad faith and you're just trying to stir up trouble. But the other thing is this, do you know if we just use the qualifier that these unprecedented things should not be allowed because they are not good for the country, they're not good for Tobago. Well, I know of another unprecedented thing. The local government elections has been pushed back for a year. To my knowledge, that is somewhat unprecedented, that the local government representatives have an extra year, that they have not been elected to get an extra year. So is one unprecedented thing that your government is doing fine and another unprecedented thing wrong? Because both are technically, as far as I'm aware, Keaton, legal.
Well, at the same time, Sean, I know you're arguing for principle, and by principle, I understand. But remember, we're in a whole different game when it comes to politics. And you know, one may argue that Mr. Duke, what he brought up, which led to the dismantling of the PDP and the THA, if you'd like to look at it that way, it may be insignificant in terms of the bigger picture, but in his eyes, it was political gold, and he achieved what he wanted to achieve. Where is Mr. Duke going to get 14 individuals to run alongside him if an election is called? That's the thing, you don't know. Mr. Duke still has support. Bear in mind, he still has support, and we may overestimate it, we may underestimate it. We don't know to the extent that he has support, but he still remains a popular figure, at least in Roxborough.
But Keaton, what was he trying to achieve? That's my question, because it seemed as though the money was already in the pipe, and his complaint was not that he complained that they're not getting any money, which seems to be false on the surface. What really seemed to be, when you read between the lines, is he was just annoyed that he couldn't demand the money right away. And Fale Augustine had said, well, no, you have to go through the proper invoicing, because that's how, by law, this thing has to run. And that seemed to really be the sticking point, right? To say that they were abandoned by the THA is technically not responsible for their trip, first of all. So what did Watson Duke accomplish except blow up the very thing that he created? And I'd like to remind people, he did say if he saw success in local government elections, he would abandon the THA. So if Tobago thinks that he is one of theirs, I would just like to remind them of a other political leader who is Tobagonian that they also are disappointed in.
Sean, with all due respect, you sound as though you're campaigning for Fale Augustine and friends.
I would like to think I'm campaigning against Mr. Duke, because I really don't see anything reasonable about the whole situation. Forget the past. I don't need the past. Okay. This whole situation.
But the mere fact is you're still campaigning, and it's not our job or responsibility to campaign. And this is the thing. I understand where you're coming from. But Mr. Duke achieved what he wanted to achieve. He wanted power. He wanted authority. He wanted his way and no other way. And therefore, by that, he came out and spoke against Fale and Friends. Now, Fale and Friends have left the PDP. Watson Duke will be the political leader of the Progressive Democratic Patriots, and we will see where it goes from there. But the argument can be made, and I think it should be made if we're to look at this all around, that though Fale Augustine, Dr. Faith B. Israel, and others are part of the THA, are assemblymen and hold secretarial positions, at the same time, they won their campaign not by an independent running, but rather running as part of the PDP. And that is why I say the confusion lies on the ground because party politics tends to dominate. As I said, also, it's brilliant timing, given the fact that it's the PM internal elections were only just called last night in the sense of the results. At the same time, this government has a lot of public relations to do, even more so in Tobago than anything else. The PNM Tobago Council is not in full force. It's not at full strength. So this is why the next month or so is going to be rather interesting, especially seeing what Folly Augustine and friends do. Because, put it this way, if they were to form their own political party, then I would make an argument it's time to call an election, because you're running under a completely different political party.
Well, okay.
But, hold on, but does that make it right for them to remain in the positions as independents who won by a party vote, party ticket? That is up to the people of Tobago to decide.
Well, hold on. I think it goes back to a question I asked earlier. We're going to go for the break, but I'll remind you the question. This conversation can't end here, and that's basically this. Who really is the PDP? Is it the founder, or is it the person that was put up for the position of the executive? So we can't even necessarily say it is the political leader versus the people under him, right? Because it's the executive leader plus all of the frontliners, plus all of the backbenchers, all of the assemblymen. This is the equivalent of the parliamentarians. All of the people that make up the government, any party outside of Mr. Duke, right? That would have constituted the majority of the election campaign, right? Are they not the PDP and responsible for the work of as the PDP, and they realize that the situation is untenable and it is better to leave? So that's the thing. I understand what you say, but we'll get into that question when we come back from this break. Stay tuned to Talking Point on WASN.
Your home a work of art. Step into a spacious place of creative ideas for your home space. Our floor and wall tiles and natural stone is ideal for any use you need in your home. Toilet, bathroom sets and vanities lend design to your creativity, while jacuzzis and shower enclosures create the mood for dwelling on life's pleasures. Lamps and lighting fixtures add ambience and memorable pictures. Horseye lights, tiles and bath, making your home a work of art. Oceans Industrial Complex, Union Road, Marabella.
Better Value Limited has been making gift giving easier and more affordable for over 26 years. Power tools, indoor, outdoor furniture and accessories, mini appliances, designer fragrances, houseware and home decor products, and all your bridal registry items. Now in stock, our stylish loft bed and study desk combo unit for just $16.50. Better Value Limited. Call 235-3709 or visit us at Princestown or Gulview, or check our Facebook page.
Whether it's a room for 1, 2, 3 or more, there's a room waiting with the ocean view almost to your door. Cocoa Reef Resort and Spa, the perfect getaway when you don't want to travel far. The Cocoa Reef Resort and Spa, Crown Point, Tobago. Call 639-8571 for your reservation.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Your Christmas is safe with us at PCU. Police Credit Union. Police Credit Union. Your Christmas is safe with us at PCU. Police Credit Union. Police Credit Union.
Get an easy zero-interest Christmas loan at Police Credit Union today. Borrow up to $25,000 with affordable monthly payments. New members, you get up to $10,000. No interest, no installments until January. Apply online at www.policecreditunion.com. Loan subject to credit approval.
Better Value Limited has been making gift giving easier and more affordable for over 26 years. Power tools, indoor, outdoor furniture and accessories, mini appliances, designer fragrances, houseware and home decor products, and all your bridal registry items. Now in stock, our stylish loft bed and study desk combo unit for just $16.50. Better Value Limited. Call 235-3709 or visit us at Princestown or Gulview, or check our Facebook page.
It's Christmas time, and with your family you'll spend every evening watching a movie on WESN. The classics that fill your heart with merriment and cheer as we celebrate together the most wonderful time of the year.
This is my island in December.
This Christmas, WESN celebrates with you as the content capital brings the big screen classics. Join us with your loved ones Mondays to Saturdays from 8 p.m. and Sundays at 9 p.m. for We Christmas Movie Classics.
Santa's coming to town! Santa! Oh my God! Santa here? I know him! I know him!
Only on WESN, Content Capital.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. An interesting discussion, which I think it's very interesting because obviously our opinions are not necessarily going to be the be-all and end-all of this situation. But I do think that while it may sound like campaigning, I myself want to just point out what I believe is reasonable arguments with this situation so that people will understand. Because to me, I have to ask the question again, Keaton, who exactly is the PDP that won the election? It is of the beliefs of some political analysts that ultimately speaking, not only, of course, are you saying the entire slate, except for Watson Duke, resigned from the PDP. Shouldn't they have a significant amount, if not the majority responsibility for winning that election? But the person put up as the chief executive of the government body, who that is usually the slot that makes or breaks your party election, whether it is in the UK, in the US, or even in Trinidad. So yes, that position is split between the political leader and the chief executive. But Watson Duke wasn't necessarily able to do it without Farley. And he wasn't necessarily able to do it without putting Farley as the candidate for chief secretary. So really and truly, is it that those who have left, and it's all of them, it is all of the elected assemblymen, plus the appointed councillors, although one could argue the appointed councillors, that's a different situation. They all decided to leave, right? They all came together as a unit. Everybody's saying that they elected a unit. There's still a unit there because they all put their same names and signed the same document. To me, on a certain level, on a practical level, aren't they really the unit that was elected in? And what is left of the PDP is just a minority shell that is very inconsequential by comparison?
You made the argument that Watson Duke could not have won the election without Farley, Chavez, Augustine, Dr. Faith B. Israel, and others who have resigned. And I hear your argument, and I agree with your argument. But would Farley, Augustine, and perhaps we will never truly know the answer to this, would Farley, Augustine, Dr. Faith B. Israel, and others win the election without the umbrella of the PDP and perhaps without Watson, Solomon Duke? And that's the question I've been asking. So it directly opposes essentially what you're suggesting.
Can I put a theory to that question?
Sure, please do.
I think that I don't know if they could have made the entity. But once an entity is there, they could have won. They didn't. I don't think they necessarily needed Watson Duke's party. To what extent was the campaign even done by Watson Duke? I will give him credit for starting the second party, the opposition party, of which they joined, right? So if nobody else filled that role, well then I think it's safe to say that doubt that you have there, I think is very reasonable. Would they have been able to get to start the whole thing from scratch? I don't know.
Let's put it from another angle. You had other parties existing before the formation of the Progressive Democratic Patriots. For example, you had the Tobago Organization of the People.
Yes.
You had Tobago Forwards. Even Dr. Soifat Angus, she formed her own political party.
She's former PNM, though.
She is former PNM, but she went against the PNM. The thing is, and by the way, that's not always the popular thing to do.
Yes.
But the thing is, there were other political alternatives. If these individuals had joined that party, and maybe we're looking at this completely wrong, maybe we're debating the wrong questions, but they're very important because we're still trying to figure out what is the political ideology of the Progressive Democratic Patriots, other than removing the People's National Movement from power, which they were successful in doing so as a party, versus governing the people of Tobago, governing Tobago, and hopefully making Tobago a spark once more. You see, the thing is, in any election, they make the argument that you do not vote a party into power, you vote a party out. After 18 years, clearly that's what happened in Tobago. The PNM were voted out. So the PDP, took the election by storm, essentially, 15-1. Which I think people were expecting a majority going to the PDP. I just don't think to that extent. In some areas, it was extremely close to call.
Including PNM strongholds.
Exactly. So now, if Farley, Augustine, and them, what is this collective group? What is their ideology? What are they campaigning on? Is it the same principles as the PDP? Because at one point, they shared the vision of the PDP.
Well,
at one point, they were the backbone of the PDP. So at this point, arguably, the PDP does not have a backbone as compared to Farley, Chavez, Augustine, and them. But at the same time, again, I'm questioning, where does this leave this grouping that has resigned?
I actually think that you're saying if they form a new political party, then there should be elections called. I'm actually saying that they need to form a new political party so that people understand. Because the words out of the Tobagonians report in the press is, we elected a unit, not independents. So to me, potentially it might be the reverse. If they stay as independents, that might be a bad sign because potentially they could slowly drift apart and lose that cohesion as opposed to having an identity for Tobagonians to rally behind collectively. Now, with regards to the ideology of the party, I think, honestly speaking, listen, I don't have a lot of confidence in Mr. Duke's ability as a technocrat, as a politician, as a leader. That's very much clear. I make no excuses about it, right? I do not find the man to have any admirable qualities for the position that he holds. The fact that he was able to form the PDP, I think, given my opinion of him, is impressive enough. With that said, the ideology of PDP, I think, came mostly from the candidates who left. But we need to remember that ultimately speaking, they're political newcomers. They might be professionals in their field. They might have been leaders of the community, but they're political newcomers. So let's take wesn Duke out of the equation. I think it's addition by subtraction with him. Even with that, though, that does not change the fact that they lack a certain amount of experience in government. And I do wonder if, to some extent, the challenges of the situation that they face might be a lot for people without experience to deal with. And it's not so much that it's sinking them, but it's really and truly, at the very least, perhaps making things even more difficult than it should be. Because they have similar challenges to the central government. But I do wonder if, when they got into office and they realized to the extent of how their budget was more or less sunk and the amount of things that had to be addressed, how to prioritize it, where to go, how to start, how to communicate and lead the island through all of this. I don't think they're sinking, but I do think that they're in a quagmire, and the results, that's why the results, it might end up not being everything that Tobago hoped it would be. That's not to say that anybody else could do any better, but at the end of the day, it is what it is, and you do have to wonder if there were better candidates with more experience, they would be able to handle the situation better. And by better candidates, I don't mean the ones who lost the election. I mean, in a perfect world, hypothetically, better candidates with more experience.
You know, Sean, you made some very good points this morning, and I'm not trying to argue against your points. I'm trying to look at it all around. And even the points that you've made with respect to Mr. Watson Duke, again, that's your opinion, and I respect your opinion. I will simply say that whilst a lot of what you said may be true, and at times I wonder how in the world is it that this man has achieved so much? Because let's face it, he was PSA president for quite some time. You know, he was the only individual, as far as I remember, and I'm due to be corrected on this, that actually won an election running against the PNM and Tobago in 18 years, the first individual to do so. Furthermore, and when I say that, I mean within the THU, you know, furthermore, the mere fact is this man remains very popular, regardless of whether or not you disagree with what he says or what he does. He's brilliant in the sense that the man really knows how to, put it this way.
Manipulate?
Manipulate is one way of looking at it, but he really knows how to appeal to the man on the street and how the man on the street thinks. And and people might say, Keaton, you're being very insulting right now. And I'm not being insulting. I'm being very much practical to the reality of what's happening. He knows how to appeal to the man on the street and how the man on the street thinks. And quite frankly, that is what's made him so popular, and that's really why he has the political strength.
What makes him different to the PNM or the UNC then?
Because he goes against what the PNM and the UNC says.
I understand that, but that's how our politicians in Trinidad operate.
Precisely, that is the thing. But people in Trinidad and Tobago are often confused, and when they don't see what they like or don't get what they want, as long as there's an individual right there that is speaking, or they see that individual speaking on behalf of them or arguing on behalf of them, regardless if that individual is making impractical promises or things that are just not realistic, they're still going to follow that individual. We see that with quite a few political commentators, and we see that with very many politicians. And that's the thing. He's been very brilliant in the way that he's gone about and doing things. I will give him that much credit. Farley, Augustine, and friends, well, they've done a lot of well. In fact, a political party evolves. Now, the ideology of the political party, as you would have made the argument, would have been based on this core group, their vision for Tobago, their beliefs, and that is what they campaign on, and perhaps that is what won the PDP, the Tobago House of Assembly. Fine, fair enough. I'm not arguing against that. However, now that they've, this exited the party, does the vision of the PDP change? And now that they've essentially resigned their position, well, no, they've resigned their positions, but essentially that separation, there's been a clean separation now from the party. Does their political ideology change? So all of those are things that we will see. We can't really argue about right now. But, as I said, Mr. Watson Duke, he may come across as foolish to you, and at times he does come across as foolish to me, but still, he is successful. And he has achieved that, and we cannot turn a blind eye to that. So
I still say that he didn't win the election. Farley and friends won the election. But I have a quick question for you, Keaton. Okay, I think the ideology of that group will remain mostly unchanged, right? That's my assumption. Now, it seems as though everybody is trying to get this election now called, I don't know what Ansel Dennis is hoping to accomplish. I don't know what Watson Duke is hoping to accomplish. Let's take the PNM out of the equation because, as you said, they and all, do they even have 15 candidates that they could put out on a general election right now that won't just be cannon fodder? Say that Tobago had to choose between Watson Duke and Farley Augustine and the 13 assemblymen and the 3 councillors. We're analysts now. I said I think that perhaps Farley and friends and their inexperience might actually work against them, might be a detriment, right? So I'm not saying that everything is all rose-colored, gold-plated lilies over there. But who is better for Tobago?
That's up to the people.
Farley and friends or Mr. Duke?
That is entirely up to the people of Tobago to decide.
No. I know they might decide who they want, but as an analyst, who do you think is better?
I have expressed, as an analyst, I'm in no position to make such any claim in relation to that. As an analyst, I can only put forward arguments that I've seen on both sides, which I've done this morning. I will not sit here and be baited into answering a question such as that, which again, that wouldn't be me. Hold on. That wouldn't be being an analyst now. That would be me being a politician. It's up to the people of Tobago to decide. I will continue to make arguments as I see it, whether it be for Mr. Farley Chavez Augustin and for Mr. Watson Solomon Duke. If an election is called tomorrow, it'll be very interesting to see. But at this point, I'm in no position to answer that question. I'm just being plain and honest with you.
Okay, I am willing. I'm not gonna ask you and be unwilling to answer it myself. I am willing to answer it, and I'll just say this. Everything that you said about Mr. Duke is success in elections, which is nice, and which is questionable with regards to his success in the last 2 THA elections. But with the actual administration, what success they had, and I will say this, it is arguable that the success hasn't been that substantial. How much have they really done within the last year? How much have they really been able to accomplish? It might not be as much as some people would like. But I'd say whatever practical benefits that Tobago has seen after the PDP victory, I don't think much of it is attributed to Mr. Duke. He himself was busy in Trinidad. He himself said that, by his own words, he will leave the THA if they get success in the local government elections in Trinidad.
You do realize you indirectly answered your question.
Right, so my answer is I do believe that the people who are actually doing the work are better for Tobago. That's just practical. All right, we have to take a break. When we come back, we'll get into further conversations. Of course, Keaton hasn't weighed in with regards to the internal election. So stay tuned on Talking Point. Keaton Shaw, Sean Michael Small, we'll be right back.
Christmas coming, here is all around. Christmas back in town. Christmas coming, here is all around.
Christmas is coming, and your fingers know it.
Christmas back in town. Christmas back in town. Christmas back in town. Oh yeah, I can feel it. Christmas back in town.
For a finger-licking good Christmas, KFC.
Christmas back in town.
Whether it's a room for 1, 2, 3 or more, there's a room waiting with the ocean view almost to your door. Cocoa Reef Resort and Spa, the perfect getaway when you don't want to travel far. The Cocoa Reef Resort and Spa, Crown Point, Tobago. Call 639-8571 for your reservation.
AM Prime on WESN, the only place from 6 to 7:30 a.m. where you can get the most analytical and thorough interviews and regional reports.
The Barbados Labour Party, led by the Prime Minister Mia Motley, once again able to achieve a clean sweep in yesterday's general election.
I think a lot of people have underestimated the power of Tobago nationalism.
If the government is afraid to say it, Martin George, I am saying it this morning on your show, Andy, there will be no carnival before Ash Wednesday.
Grab a cup of coffee and start your day right watching AM Prime with Andy Johnson weekdays from 6 a.m. only on your content capital, WESN.
Your Christmas is safe with us at BCU. Police Credit Union. Police Credit Union. Your Christmas is safe with us at BCU. Police Credit Union. Police Credit Union.
Get an easy zero-interest Christmas loan at Police Credit Union today. Borrow up to $25,000 with affordable monthly payment. New members, you get up to $10,000. No interest, no installments until January. Apply online at www.policecreditunion.com. Loan subject to credit approval.
and bath, making your home a work of art. Step into a spacious place of creative ideas for your home space. Our floor and wall tiles and natural stone is ideal for any use you need in your home. Toilet, bathroom sets and vanities lend design to your creativity, while jacuzzis and shower enclosures create the mood for dwelling on life's pleasures. Lamps and lighting fixtures add ambience and memorable pictures. Hot and lights, tiles and bath, making your home a work of art. Hosins Industrial Complex, Union Road, Marabella.
Have a content capital Christmas. It's the best time of the year. Now I know we have no snow, but Christmas is still here. Ho ho, the Christmas shows each week for all to see. Movie classics wait for you and the local content for free. Have a content capital Christmas, and in case you didn't hear, oh by God, we have a content capital Christmas this year.
Inspire, motivate, encourage, hope. It's about topical issues. It's about everything that you would want to know about hope, about life. At the end, you're going to say, yes, if he can do it, I can do it too. If she can, I can do it too.
No matter what they say, living in victory every day.
Nicole Lawson Live, living in victory every day. Every Sunday at 8 p.m. and Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. on WESN.
Welcome back, folks. Of course, we did mention yesterday that the results were forthcoming, and we have subsequently received them, and that is the results for the PNM Internet election. Dr. Keith Rowley won his posting in a landslide, and the members of his team, because apparently slate is no longer the politically correct term, the team of the leaders in service team, they more or less all won their positions, I believe. Some of the secondary positions, I couldn't remember who their candidate was, so I'm not entirely sure about those results, but I assume that they won there. To some extent, with a lower margin of victory, I believe, but still, some of them still won landslides. And I do wonder, though, Keaton, that the long run of the party, it's all well and good now, because the machine, my assumption is the machine backed a candidate, and we've seen this in international politics. That's more or less the complaints that Bernie Sanders supporters have with regards to the 2016 Democratic National Convention, that the Democratic machine pushed Hillary and pushed Bernie out. Okay. The team is behind the leaders in service and Dr. Keith Rowley. Dr. Keith Rowley has gone on record to state that this is more or less just so he could finish off his term as Prime Minister, and then by the next general election, there will be a different candidate for that position. And really and truly, both he and the opposition leader, well, they're getting on in years. And I don't think either of them, regardless of their level of service, the merit of their service, I think they're slowly reaching a point where, as a human, I would prefer that they look out for themselves, retire, not continue with what should be two stressful jobs, regardless of which one they hold, because they're getting older. And obviously somebody else will have to come and take their place. Somebody else will have to replace them. Then the question is, who does the machine back when the current top guy is gone with regards to the PNM? And all of the current people were in the leaders in service team. So I want to ask Keaton, am I wrong with warning the various members of the leaders in service that it may seem fine to support the political party machinery potentially forcing through their preferred candidate, But when time comes for the new leader to be chosen, only one could be forced through, and everybody else will more or less have to be victims to the same machinery if they had aspirations to be political leader. Is that a fair warning to give?
It's a warning that you give to every political party because it's something that's happened with every single political party, here in Trinidad and Tobago. And this is the thing, my greatest respects to Karen Minister, and I admire her a lot, and she knows that. But was this election result entirely surprising? No. The reason being is because if you have Dr. Keith Rowley, who has held 2 consecutive successful general elections and won both, yes, he has lost the Tobago House of Assembly, and interestingly, the local government elections next year it's I think that is what we have to look forward to now. But why would you remove him? Why would you remove him? Why would you remove, any individual who backs him from that position? So to me, the results were not entirely surprising because there was no reason at this point to remove Dr. Keith Rowley, at least in the eyes of the voters, simply because in his position, he has won the elections, which is what every political party hopes to do. That's what they want to achieve. So, whatever happens in between, they'll deal with it. The machinery, the PR machinery will try and deal with it. But at this point in time, Sean, I expected nothing different. Going forward, we will see. What's interesting is the 2025 general election.
Yes.
Then.
But the thing is, for that general election, a political leader has to be chosen. And right now, there doesn't seem to be a preferred candidate. But everybody that was happy to be a part of the machine that ensured that Dr. Rowley remained in power, if we assume that's how it went, right? My thing is, well, that precedent then means that when it comes to the next internal party election to choose the next political leader to contest 2025, it's not really going to be that democratic of a process. It's going to be who the executives, the bigwigs, the people at the top of the heap who we are not entirely sure who they are exactly. It's going to be who they want. And everybody else who has aspirations to be political leader probably needs to not even put their name forward because they don't want to potentially be on the wrong side of the currents, I guess you could say. So I do wonder if, they're somewhat shooting themselves in the foot in the long run. Yes, I'm backing our political leader now, but then if I want to be political leader in the future, I need to do a lot of the behind-the-scene maneuverings with the people who are really in charge. Otherwise, I don't even have a chance to I could try to make my case to the electorate all they want. It's not really going to make a difference. Sean,
I'm almost certain last internal election will be called for that, at least for that particular position in 2025. There will be individuals that will be nominated. There will be those who will go up, and an internal election will be called because the party will have to move forward in terms of unity. And the People's National Movement in 2025 is going to change. A lot of the individuals who are there now, I don't necessarily expect them to be there in 2025. I'm not talking about in terms of the executive positions, but you do realize individuals such as Stuart Young, Faris Arawi, etc., those were the Laurel Azamali Singh. That is who the PNMC has their future, and that's perhaps who Dr. Keith Rowley sees as the future of the PNM. And once more, listen, the party will evolve in terms of the ideology, because as I said, once individuals change, the party may go in a different direction. This is not the same PNM of which Patrick Manning, was a part of. It's also not the same United National Congress of which Baxter Pane was a part of. So when hands change in 2025, and it seems, that's the intention of Dr. Keith Rowley, the party may not be the same. It may be better, it may be worse, I don't know. But we will see when that time comes. You're making the argument for the machinery and, the potential to stifle any other individuals who would want to be political leader. I could never, ever know whether or not this particular election was true to the word of democracy and a democratic election, because Karen made some claims there. which were rather serious, but nothing can be done about it.
Or proven.
Well, it could be proven that they're putting numbers next to your name and onto this slip.
True.
It could be proven. It can't be proven that they're linking it back for persecution later on. But what is the thing, though, is that we will never know whether or not they were truly democratic, and we will never know if an internal election being truly democratic.
I mean,
we would just see what happens.
I think that is a fair statement to state. We have to state it because, from what I understand, I have heard rumors that even Tracy Davison Celestine in Tobago was not the preferred candidate by Dr. Keith Rowley. That's what I've heard. So again, I'm not saying definitely that's his opinion. I'm just saying that's what I heard. The fact that there is still a certain amount of independence within the various areas of the PNM would then suggest that it's not necessarily just one person dictating from on high how the party business is going to be conducted, right? And as you pointed out, he did win 2 general elections, so the electorate will have a difficult time seeing why they should elect somebody else. Nationally, the party, I think, is probably looking, their approval rating, I would assume, because we haven't necessarily gotten a poll after the last series of flooding, and I don't just mean last week or 2 weeks ago. We haven't necessarily gotten a poll for that. I do wonder if the approval rating might be the lowest it has been during the period, because there's also the fact that, you know, as time goes on within the second term, the approval rating just slowly but surely is going to drop. That's just human nature, right, in politics. So we can't necessarily say that it's undemocratic, but moving forward, the trends, I don't know if it's going to hold up, because as much as the PNM has been in power more often than not, to say that you're going to win a 3rd term and a 4th term, the same party, different leader, same party, I don't know if the PNM is really positioning themselves as best as possible. We take it for granted that the UNC is a weak opposition, but Kamala Prasad-Bissessar is not necessarily going to be the opposition leader forever either. And the UNC, with a new leader, might also look potentially stronger, and they will be the opposition party that is not responsible for the decisions that the government made. So come 2025, would their position be potentially stronger as well?
Kamala Prasad-Bissessar is not going to be opposition leader forever. Sure, and if she can help it, she will be opposition leader forever. You see, the thing is, I think now, more than ever, regardless of approval rating, as I've stated before, the PNM and the UNC are their weakest positions. But the PNM will still have that zhuzh if an election is called tomorrow. Even though there was all this flooding that took place, even though there's a lot of controversy, a lot of situations, you know, Trinidad really is in a mess. Let's be honest with each other. I think the PNM will still have the zhuzh. They say that the undecided voter makes up a lot, and that is true. And I think what's happening more and more is that you're seeing at least 2 main political parties in the UNC and the PNM, as they are. People say, well, I don't know who to vote for, so I'm just not going to vote at all. Now that the PNM internal election has been complete, and bear in mind, the United National Congress held an internal election earlier this year. I think there were also claims in that election that they had more people that voted in that election than were actually registered, but nothing ever came out of those claims. Now is the time for the United National Congress, even though they held an internal election earlier this year, now is the time for them to upgrade themselves. Now is the time for the NTA to come out with guns a-blazing. Now is the time for this lady, Michaela Pandy, to launch her political party if she still has political aspirations. And the thing is, you're going to start creating so many opposition parties. But the thing is, it's not a matter of trying to split the votes. But now really is the litmus test to see the true strength of these political institutions and what their political ideologies are, particularly in the case of the United National Congress, because people make the argument you need a new political party. I don't necessarily think you need a new political party, even though I've said in the past, call for an alternative now, simply because Dr. Keith Rowley's still there and Kamala Persad-Bissess is there. That's when we need an alternative. If the United National Congress were to really upgrade themselves now, and I keep using that word upgrade because they're really in a slump, then they have a great chance. The NTA, if they were to really come up with guns a-blazing, who knows, the PEP. It's really how the people on the ground think, and because of that overwhelming majority support for these two main political parties, you change your face at the UNC, you strengthen the party, you back fresh, younger, critical thinking minds who actually have good ideas and are nationalists in their mindset and in their terms of thinking, then my friend, 2025 is going to be a very interesting year.
That's a good point. I hope to see it. We need to stop being afraid of having third, fourth, fifth, sixth parties. I know the People's Partnership Coalition was not necessarily all that we hoped it would be, but we don't have to think, well, it's going to end up always quite like that. My only issue is, and this goes to something you said earlier, I don't think any political party that we have ever seen, except maybe the early days, had anything that resembled a true political ideology that framed their decision-making and their policy-making and their agenda. I just think it's a hope and a wish and a socialist agenda that is generally, across the board, the same with all the parties, with how they operate. That's the problem, even with new entrants that it's gonna be a problem, folks. But we have to break for news on the hour. When we say we'll open the phone lines, we want to hear from you, the viewer, especially with regards to this PDP thing, because this is truly unprecedented and it made a complication situation even more complicated. Stay tuned to Talking Point on WSN, your content capital.
Is your WESN News on the Hour. I am Marquise Akers. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Ansel Dennis says THA led by Nowarians. NP assures public of consistent fuel supplies to rural communities. Double murder victim identified. And internationally, dozens killed as bus covered by Columbia mudslide. Now for the details. Tobago Council leader Ansel Dennis, in response to the PDP resignations, said that there is now 2 PNM, 1 PDP, and 16 Nowarians in the THA. He added that for the first time in history, the island is managed by a team of defectors with no fixed place of abode. This is unprecedented, undemocratic, and perhaps unconstitutional. This is certainly not what Tobagonians had in mind, and there lies more challenging times ahead. National Petroleum Marketing Company Limited wishes to assure residents in rural communities that fuel distribution has resumed to key areas, in spite of the weather-related damage to roads and infrastructure. Within recent days, NP's ability to deliver fuel to service stations in rural communities was challenged by localized flooding caused by heavy rain, which cumulated in undermining roads and damaging infrastructure. In light of this transportation vulnerability, NP's assessment of the potential safety hazards and risk would have dictated that deliveries be temporarily halted to safeguard the lives of drivers and contractors, and to avert the occurrence of any incident that could potentially pose risk to human life or the environment. Service stations originally impacted have since received a supply of fuel, and an update would be provided subsequently. One of 2 men who were discovered in the second double murder in mere days has been identified. According to a newsy report, the man was positively identified by his driver's permit as 51-year-old Darren James of Market Street in Chaguanas. A Venezuelan ID card with the name Darren Ronaldo James was also found. James and another man was discovered dead in an empty lot of land along the Rivulet Road, Karuva. Internationally, a landslide on a road in the province of Esmeralda in western Colombia has killed at least 3 people and buried dozens more. A bus full of passengers was among several vehicles buried under mud and rocks, which tumbled down a hillside following heavy rains. One of the passengers helped his wife and 2 children escaped from the bus before he was buried and died. Rescuers are using heavy machinery to try to dislodge the mud. Well, that's news to the hour in WESN. I am Marquise Akers. Thanks for watching.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, now is the time that we want to hear from you, the viewer. We open up the phone lines. You should see them at the bottom of your screen. Call in, let us know what it is that you have to say. If you want to comment on the murders, if you want to comment on the latest testimony in the Commission of Inquiry into the Paria tragedy. What's your take? Tobago, let's hear from you. What's your take with regards to this situation? Because I do think it is unprecedented. And to some extent, this is going to be a case study that potentially, at least for our country, it's going to be an interesting situation to watch unfold with the split of power that we've had, the political leadership, the executive leadership, and now how that has come to a head. Will this be, in the long run, good or bad for Tobago? Ultimately, my opinion is an outsider. Keaton's opinion is that of an outsider. So call in and let us know what you have to think. We have our first caller from Santa Cruz. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, morning.
I was sitting on this phone waiting like a mapapee. Because since last week I'm trying to get in touch with you guys. And Friday, you know, you wax poetic with the old boys talk from the school and so forth and so forth. So I'm happy to be the first caller. Couple of things, gentlemen. Last week you spoke about a cashless society and the need for exact change. Do you know that when you go to the port to collect a barrel or container or whatever, that you have to be at the window with exact change? How on earth are you supposed to know what the exact change is before you get there? Isn't that why bank cards exist? So that you can debit as necessary? So that is one thing I wanted to address because Keaton had mentioned, you know, the need for a cashless society where necessary. Okay, so that's point one. Point two, I drove up the saddle. Do you know that between the Old Road, Sawa Old Road, and Cantaro, there are more than 25 lights missing. 25 bulbs that are dark. Okay? That's my public service. Now, number 3, the PDP. I think it's quite interesting and timely that Mr. Augustine and the Friends of Folly have chosen to go the independent route. And I disagree with the term Nowhereans because there are independent senators, etc., in parties. So I don't agree with that Nowherean term. I think it's quite interesting that they chose to go that route because to me it looks as though these are people that are interested in doing the job. In Trinidad and Tobago, people vote party. Do they not realize that the work goes on whether or not there's a party? It doesn't matter which party is in power. The work still exists. And if the work was being done, maybe places mightn't be flooded out the way they are. Okay? So these 16 people have opted to take their eyes away from the diversion that was created when Mr. Duke put himself in public and started to berate the chief secretary. in public, which was totally unnecessary, did not need to do business like that. Okay? So these 16 people have a choice. Either they focus on the reason the people put them in power so that they can get the job done for the people of Tobago, or they divide their time with having to respond and deal with someone else who, for whatever his reasoning, chooses to berate and mismanage, mishandle his party. So I once again side with Folly and Friends for taking having the temerity, right, to pull themselves out of the muckmire, the political muckmire, and do the job that they were voted for, getting the people's business done, which is what they said they would do. Now, as far as the building of government, and yes, they probably would need guidance and advice from seasoned people, hopefully wise people, that could show them how to maneuver the politics. But if they're going to get the job done for the people of Tobago, and they can do it without having to look behind their backs at the owner of the party. Did you notice that? He was introduced as the leader, founder, and owner of the PDP. Well, let him take his party and go and have a good party. And that's all I have to say today.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you.
We do have another caller that's been waiting. Where's the caller from? Dabadi? Dabadi.
Hello? Hello?
Hi, morning. Thank you for waiting. Sorry for that wait. Good morning, caller. You're live on air.
That's okay. That's no problem. Just a quick, brief, and I'm just loving your comments, both of you. I'm loving your comments this morning, and I just want to say, you are a prime minister for how many years, and over Trinidad, and every issue in Trinidad right now, crime, murder, these children at school, the fighting that we have been seeing, the problems we have been seeing in schools, you know, everything, the floods, the roads, everything, hills falling down, whatever, house going. And you, as a prime minister, don't even make a comment about these things. And every time you get somewhere, you make a comment about something else. The other day about cricket. Just imagine, cricket. Then you come and you make another comment on something else. But the crime, the murder that's going on in our country, you are not making a comment on this? Are you proud? Because this is happening under your leadership, under your portfolio. And you are not Minister of National Security. No comment? What is going on in our country? And then these people go sit down and jump up in the savannah and then go and elect you back. Okay, whatever. I was born before there was a government. And then you grew up in a household when government came into power, was just these people, red. So that's all you grew up in. So you know, I am like, you are so proud to be a prime minister now, but you are not solving any problems. And you are watching it, you are sleeping, because you know why? You're a happy person. You have your house elsewhere and your what elsewhere. You're a happy person. And when you retire, you will get your big pension and whatever. Let everybody else stay hungry, no water for them, flood here, the house fall down, murder, let them just murder. Let the guns just come in. Do you know that? I am in my late 60s. I have not known this. And many days I tell friends in foreign countries, I do not know if this is the Trinidad I grew up in. I do not know if this is it. I am looking for it. I'm going to hop a boat and go and look for the Trinidad I grew up in. It probably went sailing somewhere out there. And you're so proud. We have 2 boats. You went elsewhere and you buy those 2 boats to go between Trinidad and Tobago. And you name the 2 boats after Tobago. And nothing after Trinidad. We didn't have Christopher Columbus who discovered here. A boat should be named after him. Or what about the man who created steel band? A boat should be named after him. I don't know who is RPT James. I do not know. I do not know who he is. And nothing after Trinidad. Everything is just after today. Listen, let me tell you all something. God does not sleep nor slumber, you know. You see Trinidad and Tobago? You see what is going on in Tobago? And you see what is now going on in Trinidad? You see the God that I know? He don't sleep and he don't slumber. He not deaf and he not blind. And let me tell you something. Be careful, Trinidad and Tobago just don't sink and disappear. Because everybody is ill-speaking this place now. Everybody is ill-speaking us. We are not no longer looking good on no map. You understand?
Yeah.
You have a boat coming into Trinidad with tourists in it, but Port-au-Prince flooding. Somebody asked me, in America, you know, they asked me, so where did these tourists go? I say, I really don't know. Because I don't travel again, I don't go out again. It's so hard.
Yes,
it's so hard, and he is so proud.
Yes,
thank you very much, Paula.
Thank you very much.
Oh, please, let us wake up.
Thank you. Thank you, caller. Do we have anybody else? Do we have any other calls waiting?
Caller, you know, I'm so sorry that we had to cut you, but I know there's a lot of frustration built up.
Yes. We do have a call waiting from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Morning, Sean. Morning, Keaton.
Morning.
Morning.
You know, Sean, I have to take issue with your very simplistic analysis of Mr. Watson Duke. And let me say this. Mr. Duke, in the last 20 years, all these different politicians in Tobago have been trying to dethrone the PNM Tobago Council for control of the THA. Mr. Duke was able to, on his own, come in there, get elected, and he was able to stir Tobago nationalism to the point where PNM got a cocktail that they weren't even expecting. And that is the power of Watson Duke.
Well, but caller, you say that my view is simplistic, but are you saying that it is all due to him? That the other candidates did not have any part to play with regards to the win?
So of course the other candidates, but you have to understand, every shape as a leader, you know. And if it is that right now in the PNM, ain't you blaming Pete Rowley because he's the leader? So you can't change.
But caller, Pete Rowley is the Prime Minister.
Let the caller finish, because I think I understand where the caller is coming from.
It's about the leadership. We blame the leadership when things going wrong. You have to look at the leadership as well for how that went, and you have to understand that Mr. Duke is an orthodox person. You of all people worked in Tobago and lived in Tobago for a while, and you should understand Tobago people. And that is what Mr. Duke has done. And don't think for a minute because Farley and they have gone their way that Mr. Duke do a plan B and a plan C, you know. And do not discount the Tobagonian people. Remember, even Mr. Duke was even able to those people who were trying for years, the Vanna James and the Winford James, to try and change the political climate in Tobago. They weren't able to do it. He was able to do it. I'm not jumping on Mr. Duke bandwagon, you know. But I am saying you have to look at the situation in reality and understand the person who is Watson Duke, and understand that people voted for him. He was the one that set the tone. So don't think that everybody in Tobago on the bandwagon of Farley and friends.
Well,
and one other thing I would like to say.
Okay.
One other thing quickly. The Crossing the Floor Act that we brought in Trinidad and Tobago, in the Trinidad Parliament, in Trinidad and Tobago Parliament. That is something that they need to look at in the new THA Act. I'm not sure if it's there because I have to peruse it to see. But that should be something included as well. Because I believe the same way how you can't get elected, you shouldn't be elected in our party and then be able to jump ship. That should apply to the THA as well. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Sean, I think where the caller from San Fernando was coming from is that prior to the 2021 THE election, Watson Duke was a member of the Tobago House of Assembly, elected member. And I think what the caller was trying to argue is that from the time that he was able to actually do that and pull one away from the PNM, that led to a sense of nationalism.
We have another caller, but listen to what the caller said, and this is why I disagree. He said we blame Keith Rowley. Keith Rowley is the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is the head of the government. If we have to blame...
He's also the political leader of the PNM.
Right, but
and he's in charge for a lot of those individuals being where they are.
Right, so, but this situation is not exactly the same. And prior to 2021, Farley Augustine was the other THA PDP elected assemblyman. Let's not forget that. So I don't think, I understand what the point that the caller is trying to make. My only thing is, I very much don't understand how my view is simplistic and his view is not, when he is basically discounting the fact that Farley Augustine is made the chief secretary and he was at the top of the ticket for their slate for a reason with the last election when they actually had the landslide victory. That's what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. If Mr. Duke was so great, he would have been the chief sec.
I don't think he's discounting that. But anyway.
Anyway, we do have a caller from Chaguanas. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
First of all, I must disagree with your position on Asian politicians. The best politicians, because of the very nature of their job, is to provide oversight. It's people who have been successful in their ordinary life, and usually these people are the elderly people. Secondly, on Karen laws, the tragedy of that is not the first time the PNM went badly, and they choose the wrong path. When Williams went going to Senate, and he started to make some bad decisions, and Carl Phillips started to straighten them out, they moved Carl Phillips instead. And that is where the PNM went down as far as I'm concerned. I always said the PNM in its first two sections was the best government, but I could prove it with the improvement they made. And we do it again. Dr. William made it clear that the problem with Trinidad was he was not bringing annual administrative reports. He blamed Kamla Pascal for being 4 years behind, and he is more than that now. That is about the best reason to throw him out. And finally, on Tobago. We're going on red herrings. The problem is in Tobago is everybody in Tobago who is in government breaks the law. They go there and they raise CPEP salary higher than Trinidad. On what grounds? They don't raise anybody in Tobago. They get money from Trinidad, they waste it, and then they claim they don't have money. They don't get enough. But when they waste, Duke making noise beside somebody who got assistance to go and someplace, when they get stranded, they then send more money for them. Right? And everything going on Tobago is against the law. And how it is our Minister of Finance could send money to pay ex gratia award in Tobago is beyond me. Ex gratia award, as far as when I was in the public service, is where the government gets somebody benefit, but they lost the right of compensation for some problem, for example, in land acquisition. When your Section 5 notice is published, you have a year to put in your claim. If you don't that, you have the next 6 months to appeal to the president. And if that passed, you lost all your right of compensation. And the government at the time gave ex gratia awards because they got the people out. For the estimate the Commissioner of Graduation made, but without interest, because the key back was not the government. What is the rationale behind giving out that money, as far as I'm concerned, in ex gratia awards in Tobago? Any questions, gentlemen?
No, Professor. Sorry, we do have another caller waiting right behind you. But thank you for the caller. I'll make some comments later. We have a caller from Tunapuna. Good morning. Hi, morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah. Well, when we look at it, today
our people have forgotten God, and it seems not to even practice or apply some of the principles to whatever we are doing, whether you govern the country, whether we are supposed to be working for the country, and be honest. I will like to make my contribution, and plenty people, they are so blind that they are not seeing what is taking place, that the Almighty is so annoyed with us that dangers are lurking around. We are living in the dangerous time now because everything seems to be going in a negative way. Look at natural disaster is taking its course, and sooner or later we will reap the whirlwind, and many people are not aware of it, but we are living on a time bomb. If not earthquake, it's flood. Sea level rising. Islands will be disappearing because it started to happen in the Pacific. So let us in the ocean, in the Atlantic Ocean, be careful. It's time people stop studying material things and start to help their fellow human beings. Thank you so much.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you, caller.
I mean, that last caller makes an interesting point. We always take it for granted God is a Trinity, but we starting to feel maybe, I mean, what happens when the random hurricane does reach us? Because we're definitely not ready for that.
That's probably when even Faris Sarawi will change your life of spirituality. And I'll be honest with you, I understand where the call is coming from. Listen, as much as we have our criticisms, and as much as you know, we are justified many a times in the comments that we make, as well as the comments some of the callers make. I've always held the opinion that you have to look at yourself as well. You have to look at your words. You have to look at your actions as well. I mean, as much as we blame them, we have a role to play. You know, down on the streets. You know, it's how we treat each other. It's how we live with each other. It's how we act. It's what we do.
Last caller for the morning from Diego Martin. Good morning, caller.
Morning.
Morning.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
One, Duke was a silent partner, kept a low profile in the Tobago election.
That is true, yes. There was odd, yes.
Let us give Pali and his plate the opportunity to perform before we condemn them, right? And maybe we can look at this situation and create a new model for the politics in both countries. Thanks.
Thank you, caller. Well, both islands, but
totally agree. This is why I said the next month it's going to be very interesting, even beyond that. You know, so and that's that's why Sean ties in. Sean says, who's the best individual or the best
for
slate
Tobago?
For Tobago. And he made the argument, who's ever working for the people and who's ever working for Tobago. My question is, who really is working for Tobago and who's working for the people of Tobago? And we shall see. If Spally, Augustine and them succeed, that's fair. That's fine.
Well, Keaton, I can't remember if it was Ms. Santa Cruz that said that implied about, you know, breaking away from the parties. Because think about it. We say that the situation is unprecedented. Ansel Dennis says the situation is unprecedented. What is really unprecedented about the situation? Think about it. We have basically the majority of a government executive that currently is independent. The PDP is led, is founded, led, and owned. This is what he has on Facebook, owned by Mr. Duke, which implies that he's looking for return of investment from his ownership. To me, that means that he is not too dissimilar to the established powers that be. So what is really unprecedented is that currently, the Tobago House of Assembly, the majority of them, 14 of the 16 assemblymen, plus 3 of the councillors, they broke away from the party system. And the party system is what keeps the established powers that be in politics. The party system is where they get their power. The party system is what keeps them in power. The party system is what enforces. It is the foundation of their power. And I believe that is the case for the current 2 main political parties. The party system is how they hold on to their power. It's difficult to remove a sitting political leader. And I think Mr. Duke, as the owner, his words, not ours, check his Facebook page, the owner of the PDP was looking to enjoy similar benefits. I founded it, I own it, it's my party, I'm going to reap the benefits. But here we have somebody bucking the system. And for those that wanted to make use of the system, depend on the system, want to take advantage of the system, benefit from the system, I think that's bothering or could potentially bother them.
I think the only thing that will be unprecedented about this, again, Ansel Dennis, not too surprised about his response and his social media post, to be honest with you. Let's not act as though we're entirely surprised. But what will be unprecedented is that if this works, if independent individuals, independent candidates who are now at the helm of the TJ running Tobago, if it is that they are actually successful and they get the job done, I think in the sense that the people of Tobago support them, right? That is the most, that's the key part. Once the people of Tobago support them and the people of Tobago stand by them, that will be unprecedented. Because with the history of politics in Trinidad, it's really once you have the backing of a party, it's really once you have the labeling of a party, that's usually when you are successful. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but this is why the mentality of voters need to change as well.
Well, I mean, I'll just say this quick. One, I was a bit disappointed with Ansel Dennis. I had high expectations for him, but it is what it is. Even with that said, all are we in this together, so we can't necessarily look at the people who we disagree with as the enemy. We do have to keep that in mind. But Keaton, if you could close the show with us, we're more or less out of time.
Continue to have high expectations for politicians, Sean. Never lower your expectations. Continue to have high expectations. Judge them because they are the leaders. They're the ones governing Trinidad and Tobago. And just to conclude, thank you to all our callers and thank you to our directors, Sean Michael Small. I'm Keaton, and I just say it. If you can, one can or one meal, whatever you can give, whatever you can donate in these times goes a long way. Today, we may have a meal, but somebody else may not. And if we're able to share what little we have, that really, really makes a huge difference in society. But have a great day, ladies and gentlemen. Today is a good day to have a good day. Let's make it a good day. Let's make this a beautiful Trinidad and Tobago for all. This has been Talking Points, and we'll see you again, hopefully, tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Christmas coming here is all around. Christmas back in town. Christmas coming here is all around.
Christmas is coming, and your fingers know it.
Christmas back in town. Christmas back in town. Christmas back in town. Oh yeah, I can feel Christmas back in town.
For a finger-licking good Christmas. KFC.
WESN's Game Day Minute, brought to you by KFC's Game Day Bucket.
This is also a beautiful stadium, and it is loaded with red. Because red is Morocco and it's also Canada. It's beautiful. Okay? It's beautiful. Once again, we have very, very, very good teams. Very good teams. We are about 40 yards from the corner flag, but it is fantastic. The crowd is starting to erupt. The guys are warming up. I hope Canada can pull off an upset. We need them to get some points. Okay? Because I am supporting Canada all the way. Bye-bye. But there are a lot of Trinidadian guys inside here, this park also. I want you to hear a change in music. It's just upbeat music without any vocals. And that woman is playing some hot music right there in front of us. He's right in front of us here, my friend. That's him right there. Say, who are Canada? Who are Canada? Who are Canada? That is entertainment right there in front of us. That's the MC. And the DJ is further down in front of us. And wait. It was a fantastic year. And this is my buddy Michael. Okay? All the way from Canada. Looking for. Say wave, your double wave. Canada. Michael and looking for. He made the track from Trinidad. All the way here. Morocco played well in the first half, but Canada dominated the second half. And the Moroccans have felt as though it's a burden off of their chest today. What a wonderful second half. I do not think Canada will leave here feeling embarrassed at all. They played a beautiful second half. They really, really look good. Okay? But the Moroccans are very happy because they are qualified for the second half. And well, it is decibels here. Decibels. I cannot believe how loud it is. Decibels and decibels. 44,000 people. And the noise erupting out of this stadium is unreal. Good job, Mr. Morocco. Well done. Moroccan fans are here. Everyone is here. Canadian fans, the Moroccan fans, and me from Trinidad and Tobago. Enjoy Trinidad and Tobago. We are well represented.
WESN's Game Day Minute, brought to you by KFC's Game Day Bucket.
Christmas coming, here is all around. Christmas back in town. Christmas coming, here is all around.
Christmas is coming, and your fingers know it.
Christmas back in town. Christmas back in town. Christmas back in town. Oh yeah, I can feel Christmas back in town.
For a finger-licking good Christmas. KFC.
Have a content capital Christmas. It's the best time of the year. Now I know we have no snow, but Christmas is still here. Ho ho, the Christmas shows each week for all to see. Movie classics wait for you and our local content for free. Have a content capital Christmas, and in case you didn't hear, oh by God, we have a content capital Christmas this year.
The newest book is here, Closer to the Church, the debut novel by author and former Mayor Louis Lee Singh. Available at all the Home Store branches, Barataria, West Mall, Shogunas and C3 San Fernando. Paper-based bookshop 10 Nook Avenue St. Anne's, WESN 30A Gattaca Street Woodbrook, Metropolitan Bookshop Ariapita Avenue Woodbrook, and all RIK bookstores nationwide. Available online as paperback on Amazon.com and Kindle for e-readers. For more info, call 628-5835 or 389-6504. Also available from author Louis Lee Singh, I Used to Live in Heaven, Letters to My Granddaughters, and Local Government in Trinidad, Conspiracy Against the People.
I'm Andy Johnson, and you're watching WESN, the content capital. The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
I am Sule A. Joseph, and we are WESN, Content Capital. Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
I am Rondell Donowa, and you are watching WESN, the Content Capital. People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive, it is not rehabilitative.
We the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, it's for all of us in public.
I am Kemuel Pascal, and we are WESN, Content Capital.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered,
the conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN, Content Capital.
I am Mahi Sekas, and you are watching WESN, the Content Capital.
In this season, we talk more about health, wellness, and everything in between. I am so excited to share with you everything about health and wellness so that you can design the life that you've always dreamed of. Join me here on What's Up Doc.
What's Up Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
I'm Keaton Shaw and we are WESN, the Content Capital. What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers? Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the Content Capital.
I'm Sean Michael Small, and we are WESN, the Content Capital.
AM Prime on WESN, the only place from 6 to 7:30 a.m. where you can get the most analytical and thorough interviews and regional reports.
The Barbados Labour Party, led by the Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley, once again able to achieve a clean sweep in yesterday's general election.
I think a lot of people have underestimated the power of Tobago nationalism.
If the government is afraid to say it, I, Martin George, I am saying it this morning on your show, Andy. There will be no carnival before Ash Wednesday.
Grab a cup of coffee and start your day right watching AM Prime with Andy Johnson weekdays from 6 a.m. only on your